Hi, I'm Rachel with the Charlotte Mason Plenary. Today we are talking about wellness, especially when it comes to us moms and the need to take care of ourselves. So we're going to talk with Amy Bodkin, who you might know as our special needs consultant over at the Plenary, but she's also a yoga instructor. Hey, Amy.
Hey!
How are you?
We're doing fine. Staying home.
Yes, so some people might not know that you're a yoga instructor. How did you get into yoga in the first place?
Okay, so I took one class and I said, this is stupid. I'm never doing it again. And then several years later, I ended up homebound for my health. I was really sick and I was seeing all kinds of doctors. They couldn't figure out why I was sick and they couldn't figure out what really to do about it. I had a lot of diagnoses. And then after almost a year, I read a book. It was called Childhood Disrupted. It was talking about how when our bodies are stressed, we go into fight or flight. We dump all of our neurotransmitters, our hormones, our electrolytes, vitamins, minerals, just everything. And we dump it into the bloodstream and then we pee it out. And so if you do that over and over again, you end up depleted. And so I kept trying to refill my body with all these things I was dumping. But in reality, I needed to plug the hole to keep them from being let out through my body. So I found yoga and tried that. And within 5 months, I wasn't homebound anymore.
That's pretty incredible.
It was very incredible.
Yeah.
I went to an immunologist and he said, what have you been doing? I said, I've been doing yoga. This was after 4 months, once a week. With a private instructor. And he goes, go home and do more yoga. I was like, okay. So a month later, I went back and all my labs were completely normal.
So you had that result after just once a week, not like every day or anything? You were just doing it once a week?
Once a week, she would come to my home and she'd give me a practice to practice throughout the week. But it was like maybe 20 minutes because I was still pretty weak at that point, and there were a lot of things I couldn't do. So it doesn't have to be real strenuous to have the benefits.
That's an interesting point. I was just watching this documentary on yoga on PBS the other night, and they were talking about the parasympathetic nervous system and how restorative yoga especially is really good for that and for really lowering stress levels, allowing the body to heal. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite kinds of yoga.
Okay, good.
So there's two ways that yoga can help the immune system. One, the process of movement, it gets your lymphatic system moving because your lymphatic system, it goes all over the body. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar to your circulatory system, except for the fact that your circulatory system has a pump that pumps the blood through your body. Your lymphatic system does not. Movement is what pumps it through. And so the movement component of yoga can improve your immune system by pumping through your lymphatic tissue. So the movement is important, but the primary, most important, most underlying benefit of yoga is the benefits we see from restorative yoga and meditation and those slower, not very much movement involved type practices. That's the whole point of the movement, is to get your mind to a point that it can settle so that it can be in a meditative type state. Because when we reach that point, we're able to reduce blood pressure and reduce stress and all of these things that can really harm our bodies. So.
Okay, so reducing stress. So important, right? Especially for moms and for homeschool moms. We're often we put ourselves last so much, right?
Yes.
And it's so important to put ourselves first. It's like on the airplane, you have to put your oxygen mask on first, right? In order to help anybody else. Mm-hmm. So what are some ways that we can put ourselves first with self-care and with maybe implementing some yoga?
Well, first thing is to recognize that we're worthy of taking care of ourselves. And I think sometimes we get the impression, I get the impression sometimes that we think our worth is derived from what we do, not from the fact that we are. And
moms are persons too, right?
Yes, moms are persons too.
Right.
Exactly. So I think recognizing that first is probably the most important thing. And it's something that you really have to remind yourself of every day, because it's very easy, especially with the inputs we get from society and such, to believe that our value comes from what we do and not just the fact that we are. But doing yoga every day doesn't have to be anything huge. If you have high blood pressure, a really great pose to do would be to lay on your floor with your legs up the wall. It's called legs up the wall. It reduces blood pressure, and it's also very relaxing. And
I love that pose.
It's easy. Now, if you have low blood pressure, that's not your friend, because your feet will go numb. I tend to run low, so that pose is not for me. I could do legs in a chair.
You can also do, I was about to say, you can put your legs in a chair, like at a 90-degree angle, right?
Yeah, you could do that. And there's other poses, even just laying down on the floor or sitting in a chair and closing your eyes and taking a moment to listen to the sounds that are around you.
And to breathe, right?
Yeah, breathing. And also doing breathing exercises. A lot of times we tend to breathe in our top chest, and that's when we get anxious. And if you chronically are anxious and breathe in your top chest, it will actually reduce your lung capacity to where you're not able, for example, I knew someone who did lifeguard training, and that person was not able to go to the bottom of the pool due to lack of lung capacity. And chronic anxiety can be one of the things that can lead to stuff like that. So also your breath, it's the only thing in our body that we can easily control or not control. We can control how we're breathing, or we can not pay attention and we're still breathing. So it's one of those few functions that we're really able to travel between conscious control and unconscious. So it really kind of connects us with our mind body. And you're trying to let the mind settle, and the mind gets so distracted by so many other things that when you are focusing on the breath, you're giving it something else to think about. So meditation, a lot of it goes back to meditation. Meditation, a lot of times people don't really quite understand what meditation is. Meditation is a practice similar to prayer, because prayer is a practice that's used in every religious or even non-religious settings. And when was the last time that you actually took a moment to pause and just listen without having any kind of agenda of, oh, I need to do this, I should do this, I should fix this? When did you just sit and listen? Like maybe when you go, nature study is a great example of a type of meditation. You go outside and you're just listening to the birds. You're not trying to control the birds. You're not trying to fix the birds.
Well, and the Charlotte Mason method has so many of these calming activities built into it.
Yes.
And things that reduce stress and create bonding. And
classical music. Classical music is
picture study. Yeah, picture study does that too, looking at beautiful works of art.
That's true.
Nature study, just spending time in nature, all of that lowers the cortisol level.
And you will actually see people use things like classical music and nature sounds and stuff when doing a meditation too.
Yeah.
Or staring at a specific picture or a flame or something.
Yeah. So I love how all that is built into our homeschool routine and into our daily lives. But how are some other ways that we can use yoga? I mean, obviously we want to get the kids involved too. Sometimes it's good for them.
It is very good for kids. Personally, my favorite go-to resource for kids is Cosmic Kids Yoga.
Okay.
She's out of Great Britain, I believe, and she's so fun, and it's very engaging for the kids. She does a really nice job with it, and that's the thing. A lot of times people have the idea that yoga needs to be a particular way, but one of the things that I tell my parents when I teach family yoga is I have 2 rules. One is that when the kids are in the room, they are not allowed to hurt anyone or anything in the room. And the other rule is for parents, and it's mind your own mat. Because each person comes to their yoga practice and has their own experience. And it's not our job to try and tell them what that experience should look like or how it needs to be. And in a lot of ways, that ties back into Charlotte Mason as well. It applies to all of her other subjects because she was constantly telling parents to let the children relate and get out of the way. And it's the same way with yoga.
That's true. And it's respecting personhood, and not, like you said, getting in the way or placing expectations on the child. Yeah.
It's their practice, and it will grow and change as the child grows and changes. But that doesn't mean that their early relationships aren't good just because it's an earlier part of the relationship.
Right. It's a journey.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the same way with yoga for kids. They don't tend to sit still as well.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah. So it works out better most of the time to do something with a lot of movement for them. And actually they talk in yoga about how there's stages we go through in our practice. When you're younger, you'd have a tendency to do more movement, to be more interested in things that involve more exertion, things like vinyasas and hot yoga, things that will tax the body physically. But as you get older and you have children and you add all this stress to your life, you find that you're needing a slower practice, more restorative yoga. And so as moms, restorative is more helpful for us. But that doesn't mean that that's where our kids are at necessarily. However, teaching them a short breath can be really helpful. My personal favorite to do with kids is the bee breath. And you put your hands over your ears and cover them up. And you go, and it sounds like it's a bee buzzing around inside your head. Also for kids, you can do a visual meditation. So a visual meditation is more like telling a story. But instead of focusing more on the plot, it should be a very simple story, maybe about a snowflake that flies through the air, goes over a mountain range, falls down into a sunny valley and lands on a rooftop, and then slowly melts and falls into the ground eventually, and then a flower sprouts. Something very simple like that, not a lot of plot, but you're focusing all of your verbiage on the sensory experience, how it feels to float through the wind, how cold it is, how it feels to feel the sun melting you as you drip off the roof. So you're looking for those kinds of things and allowing the child to embody a sensory experience that's pretty simplistic and not complicated. For moms, my favorite way to explain meditation, this is what I envision, is I picture myself it's in the British countryside. There's a low stone wall, there's sheep, and there's this dirt road in front. And as I'm sitting there, if something comes into my head, then there will be a car that comes over the hill and is headed down and to where I'm at, and the car stops in front of me, and whatever I was thinking about is driving the car. So if it was my cat is driving the car. If it was my laundry is driving the car. And it's funny enough that you're able to let it go. And that's the thing. When we take ourselves too seriously, it's harder to let things go.
That's a good image. I like that.
That one helps me a lot. Some people imagine their thoughts like leaves blowing across their mind, but I needed to add a little bit of something funny because I just couldn't let them go. Apparently, I take myself too seriously.
So if moms have some reservation about maybe starting yoga or meditation, what can you say to help them get past that hurdle?
Well, it definitely seemed kind of weird to me at first, which is part of the reason why when I took my first class, I said, this is stupid, I'm never doing it again. The other thing was I was like, I'm just standing here, I'm not seeing the benefits. It took me a little while. Apparently, I wasn't supposed to just be standing there. I was supposed to be activating muscles, but nobody had told me that, and I wasn't doing it. So understanding the benefits is definitely helpful. And we've talked a little bit about that today. The fact that it gets your lymphatic system moving, the fact that it's helping you to be aware of your body, your joints and your muscles and what you're doing with those. I was hyperextending a lot of my joints, which wasn't good for me. And so I also wasn't developing muscle because I was using my joints to hold me up. And that's really not good for your joints. So bringing awareness, a slowness to your movement and seeing, ooh, this feels different today. Or, oh, I'm a little tight here. Or, ooh, we're getting a little too loose. Maybe we're a little bit stressed today. Or maybe I'm tight and I'm stressed. So just bringing more awareness to the body and also slowing the mind down and allowing yourself to focus on taking care of you, self-care, and letting go of all the other things that are outside of your body for just a few moments even. The other thing that I find is helpful is that sometimes when we have reservations, it's because we don't really know what it is because everything about yoga was written in Sanskrit in India thousands of years ago. So there's a little bit of a gap there. We're kind of like, oh, what is this? Is this some kind of religion or something? And it's fascinating to look into the ancient history of yoga. This was one of the things I had to study when I was going through my training. It's fascinating because some of the world's oldest religions and philosophies, they shared some of this knowledge. It was interesting for me because in our homeschool, we learned Hebrew. And so when I was doing my yoga teacher training, I was like, whoa, hold on just a second. I know what some of these words are. And they were in Sanskrit. So turns out Hebrew and Sanskrit have a very close relationship, and that the ancient Israelites and the ancient yogis had communication at some point. There's references to meditation in Hebrew in ancient Hebrew sources. They just have not been translated into English. It's been a practice that has spread throughout the world thanks to some of those oldest religious and philosophical traditions that have impacted the entire world. Yoga is a term we use. It means union in Sanskrit, but that word is used for so many things in Sanskrit. There is a religion called yoga. There is the philosophy of yoga, which is what we're talking about right now. It's a theistic philosophy, which means that it is a philosophy that assumes some kind of a higher something, whether that's God, whether you see it as God, Allah, Adonai, however you say that. But it's something that people who all believe in something higher than themselves can unite on. Hence union of body, mind, spirit, but also union of people. And recognizing that we're practicing things that have benefited people for thousands of years, and that practice unites us with people from all over the world, all different walks of life, all different traditions, moms just like us who thousands of years ago also were really, really aggravated by their children being constantly underfoot and asking why nonstop. It was the same thing.
I love that it means union, and that's one of my goals of the plenary. Plenary also means union and to bring people together.
Yes.
And that's why I chose the word. But another word that I really love in yoga is namaste.
I love that word.
Yeah, and I reference it in my Principle 1 video because I think it really gets to the heart of children of one persons. So can you talk a little bit about what namaste means?
Namaste means the deepest part of I bows and honors the deepest part of you. That what is most deep within me recognizes what that part of you, we might call it holiness, What is the most holy part of you, the most sacred? The sacred, that's a great word. What is most sacred in me honors what is most sacred in you.
Right. Yeah, and I've heard it described as the light in me honors the light in you. And so
yes, we'll say that in class. We'll say the light that is within me honors and is grateful for the light within you, and then say namaste.
Yeah, and I think that it's such a great message, not only for ourselves, that we have something that is precious and valuable and divine in ourselves, but also for our children to know that they have that in them as well, and that they are special and unique. So there's so much that I love about yoga, and I just thank you so much for talking about it today and all the ways that we can use it for ourselves and our kids and our homeschool and everything for de-stressing. I really appreciate it. Oh, and you have a yoga Facebook page, right?
Yes, I do. And I posted a class I did recently for kids. It's a Harry Potter one. Even if it's not one that you want to share with your kids, watching it yourself may be somewhat helpful. There are 10 things in yoga they're called the yamas and the niyamas. They are 5 things that we try to avoid doing and 5 things that we try to encourage more or less. And so I talk about it in that class. And one of the things that we try to encourage more of, as far as how we see people outside of ourselves, is seeing the sacredness in everyone and everything. And it kind of dovetails with what you were talking about how Charlotte Mason saw everybody as a born person. And when we honor the sacredness that is within other people, we treat them better. And when we honor the sacredness in animals, we treat them better. And so it actually ends up uplifting us as people. But also, you can't sit with your mind if you are being unkind to other people, or stealing other people's opportunities, or being violent, whether with our words or with our actions. And so that's why those principles exist in yoga. It's to help us be able to sit with ourselves. And it also helps us to grow as people in community with each other as well.
So you have a Facebook page too. What's the name of it?
It's Yoga by Amy.
Yoga by Amy. All right, we'll put that link, and we'll also put the link to the other YouTube channel for kids. What did you call it?
Cosmic Kids Yoga.
Cosmic Kids Yoga. Okay. Thank you, Amy. We appreciate you talking to us about it today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.